In this video, we're going to learn how to add rational expressions. So we're basically going to have two fractions and we're going to add them. But instead of just multiplying across or adding across like we did with multiplying, what we have to do is get common denominators. So please make sure that you have your heading on your paper. You can always pause this. I just want to put a little note in here before we start. And can you write in order to add fractions? In order to add fractions. Adjust this a little bit so it doesn't keep moving. You must have a common denominator. You must have a common denominator. What that means is you cannot add or subtract until you have a common denominator. So for instance, if you can write this example down for me, x plus 2 over 3x. If I want to add x plus 5 over 3x to it, because they have the same denominator, I'm allowed to combine. So I can add the x's together. X plus x is 2x. 2 plus 5 is 7, so positive 7. And I don't change the bottom to 6x. I don't add across. I keep the same denominator. So if you think of if you had 1/4 plus 1/4, that wouldn't be 2/8, that would be 2/4. This is an example that you can't have. Can you write x plus 2 over 3x plus x plus 5 over 4x? It would be incorrect to say, so can you put an equal sign with a slash? This is not the same as combining the top, 2x plus 7, like we did it over in the other one, and then adding the denominators, 3 plus 4x is 7x. That is not true. You need to get a common denominator first. So we've got some steps. So can you write steps for me? And we actually have 4 of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to do these 4 steps as we're doing the example. So I'm going to leave a line for rule 1 or step 1, a couple of lines for step 2, a couple of lines for step 3, and then we have step 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do some examples. I'm going to put here combine and simplify. That's our directions. Combine and simplify. So I'm going to do example A as we are doing our steps. So let me just shift this up a little bit. Here's the example we are doing. And if you could leave some room around it, I'm going to write this really big, but I'm going to leave some space around it. So I'm going to put this maybe down here, and I'm going to write 2x minus 5 over 4x. And then I'm going to leave some room next to it. The next fraction is 4x plus 2 over 6x. We cannot combine these yet because there is no common denominator. We need these to be the same. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go back up to our steps. Step 1, find the LCD. Find the LCD. LCD means least common denominator. So you want a number that both of these go into and variables as well. So if I look, I notice that I have a 4 and a 6 on the bottom. Well, the smallest number, the smallest multiple that they share in common would be 12, and I can show you how to do that. If you go to your y equals, and if you type in 4 with an x, I'm just ignoring the x for now, and then for y2, type in 6 with an x. If you go to your table, you're looking for the first number that you see in common. So if you look in your y column, the first number that you see in common would be your 12. So our LCD is going to have a 12 in it. Now I looked at both of these have an x, so my LCD also has to have an x. So my goal is to make my denominators 12x. Here is step 2. Can you write multiply the numerator and denominator? You can abbreviate these. Multiply the numerator and denominator by the same factor, that will give the LCD. That will give the LCD. And I'll explain that. So what we want is we want both of these fractions to have a 12x on the bottom. So in order to do that, we need to say to ourselves, 4x times what is going to give us 12x? Well, that will be a 3. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom of my fraction by 3. Over here, I want this to be 12x. So what times 6x would give us 12x? That would be 2. So I'm going to multiply both of these by 2. Because we have a couple of terms in the top, I'm going to put the top in parentheses on both fractions because I'm going to be multiplying everything by those numbers. So now what we're going to do is rewrite this problem. So I'm going to bring this down. So my new denominators are going to be 12x for both of them. So I'm going to have 12x over here and 12x over here. Now all I have to do is distribute. So I'm going to multiply everything over here by 3. So instead of 2x, it becomes 6x. Extend your fraction. Instead of minus 5, it becomes minus 15. Don't forget my little plus sign. Over here, I'm going to multiply everything by 2. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times a positive 2 is positive 4. So there's my step 2. Step 3, can you write add the numerators? You can abbreviate. Add the numerators and keep the denominator the same. And keep the denominator the same. So what I'm going to do is an extra step here. I'm going to rewrite my fraction and I'm going to add all of these together. So I have 6x minus 15. I'm not going to combine yet. Then we have plus 8x plus 4. And all of that is going to be over 12x. I'm doing this extra step. I know that some of you can combine or right away, but I'm doing this extra step because when we get into subtraction, it might be a little more difficult. Now we've added these all together. Step 4 is to simplify. So here's step 4. Can you write simplify? And we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go up here because I've run out of a little room. So I'm going to add like terms. So 6x plus 8x is 14x. Negative 15 plus 4 is negative 11, so minus 11. And I keep my denominator, my 12x. Before I'm done, I'm looking to see if there's anything that I can factor or take out of everything. There's nothing in common in the top. There's no power of 2, and there's nothing that everything has in common, so that is my answer. We're going to do a couple more of those. Here's example B. I'm going to take this off. So our goal is to find the LCD before we add. So here's number 2, or example B. Can you leave a little bit of room above it and to the side? And can you write 4x minus 1 on the top over 5x? And then plus x plus 5 over 10. First thing we need to do, step 1, is to find the LCD. So we need the common denominator. So I'm going to write LCD equals. Well, first of all, I look at my numbers. I've got a 5 and a 10. I'm ignoring the x for now. I can go to my calculator if I want to be lazy and put in 5x and 10x. And then I'm going to go to my table and find the first number that's in common in my y column. You notice they both have 10s. So my LCD is going to have a 10. I also noticed an x over here. So that means I need an x as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both fractions so we can get them to be 10x. So if I look at the first fraction, 5x times 2 gives me 10x. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 2. I have to do the same thing. I'm going to put the top in parentheses. If I look over here, what do I multiply 10 by to get 10x? Well, there's an x missing, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by x. And I'll put the top in parentheses as well. Now what we're going to do is rewrite our fractions by multiplying the top. So my denominators are both going to be 10x, so I'll bring those down. So we have 10x and 10x. And now I'm going to distribute. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Extend the fraction. Over here, I'm multiplying everything by x, so x turns to x squared. Positive 5 turns to positive 5x. Step 3 is to add the numerators and keep the denominator. So I'm going to make a really long fraction. And again, oops, don't forget your little plus. I'm going to write everything out because it will get more complicated when we get to subtraction in a later lesson. So my denominator is going to stay the same, 10x. I don't make it 20x. And now I'm going to bring all my terms over. So we have 8x minus 2 plus x squared plus 5x. My last step is to combine like terms and see if I can simplify. So I'm going to write it in standard form. So on the top, I see an x squared. I can combine my x's. 8 plus 5 is 13, so plus 13x. And then I have a minus 2. Underneath, I keep the 10x. Before I'm done, I need to look. There's no GCF. I always factor. There's no GCF, but I see a power of 2, so normally I would do my 2 sets of parentheses. But if you look at this, there are no factors of 2 that subtract to give you 13, so we can't factor that. There's nothing in common, so this is our final answer. Next example. I'm going to do one more like this. This is example C. Can you leave some space? Can you write 3 over 4x plus 1 over 2x squared? All right, we can't combine yet because they don't have common denominators, so we need to find our LCD. So we start with the numbers. So I see a 4 and a 2, so I can go to my calculator if I want to be lazy, type in 4x and 2x, and go to my table and find the first number in common in the y column. And if you notice, the first one would be 4s. So my 4 is part of my LCD. If you also notice, there are x's in both of these. Well, the most amount that I see is x squared, so we're going to have at least 2 x's. So our LCD is going to have an x squared in it. What we want to do now for step 2 is to make our denominators 4x squared. So we need to multiply. What times 4x gives you 4x squared? That would be an x. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by x. Over here, what do I multiply this by to make it 4x squared? That would be 2. So times 2 over 2. Now if I rewrite my fractions, my new denominators are going to be the 4x squareds that I want. So I can make those denominators. I can bring down my plus sign as well. And now we multiply. 3 times x is 3x, that's our new top. 1 times 2 is 2, that's our new top over here. Next step, we're going to make this one fraction by adding. So on the bottom, I keep my 4x squared. On the top, I just add what I see, so 3x plus 2. And now I look to see if I can factor. I can't factor the top, there's no power of 2 up here, and there's nothing in common, so this is our final answer. All right, next one a little more complicated. I'm going to take this off and go to example D. This is now where we're going to have binomials underneath. So if you look at the examples we've done previously, we just had monomials, one term in the denominator. Now we're going to have 2. So for this example, can you leave a little bit of room above it and to the side? Can you write 4 over 5y minus 15? And then plus, next to that, 5 over y squared minus 9. A little more complicated. If you look, we do not have a common denominator, so we need to find the LCD. In order to find the LCD when you have a polynomial or you have a binomial on the bottom, we need to factor these on the bottom and find out what factors we see, and that's all going to be part of your LCD. So for instance, we're going to factor. If I factor the bottom, I can take out a 5, and I would be left with y minus 3. Over here, I'm going to cross this off lightly. On this side, there's no GCF, but there's a power of 2, so 2 sets of parentheses. Y and y go in the front. There's no middle term, so what times itself gives you 9? That would be 3 and 3 with a plus and a minus. Our LCD is going to be one of everything. So it's going to have, we need to include the 5, the y minus 3, the y plus 3. We already have the y minus 3, so we don't count it again. So our LCD is everything that I've just underlined. So we have a 5, a y minus 3, and a y plus 3. A little more complicated. Same procedure as before. We need to get our denominators to look like this. So we are going to multiply the bottom and top by whatever's missing. So if you look over here, we have a 5 and we have a y minus 3. We are missing the y plus 3. So what we need to do is multiply the top and the bottom by y plus 3. And I'm putting it in parentheses. Don't forget your multiplication sign. Over here, we look to see what's missing. We don't have a 5. We have the y plus 3 and the y minus 3. So all we're missing is the 5. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 5. If you look now, we have common denominators. We have all the pieces we need. So when we rewrite this, our two new fractions are going to have the 5, the y minus 3, and the y plus 3 underneath it. It doesn't matter the order as long as every piece of the LCD is there. So I'm going to write both of these fractions with my new denominator. And now I'm going to multiply the top and see what I get. So again, we had to factor in order to find the LCD, and the LCD was one of everything that we had in the bottom. So if we multiply everything, if we multiply this 4 by y plus 3, we have 4y plus 12. 4 times y and 4 times 3. Over here, all we have to do is multiply 5 times 5. That's 25. Next step is to make this all one fraction. So I'm going to take my denominator and bring it over. I keep the denominator the same. So 5 times y minus 3 times y plus 3. And now I'm going to bring down all these terms. So I have 4y plus 12 plus 25. Next step is to simplify, so I can combine like terms. And again, we could have skipped this step right here, but I wanted to show you this because it will get more complicated. I'll bring down the 4y, 12 plus 25 is 37. And now I bring down my denominator. So I'm just rewriting it. To see if I'm done, I look to see if I can factor the top since there's a plus. There's nothing, there's no GCF, there's no power 2. So I cannot take anything out of this, so I am done. One more example. This has some cancellations in it, so I did want to show you this. Here's the last example. I'm going to take this off so I have room for example E. So here's example E. Can you write with some space above x minus 3 over x squared minus 9x plus 20 plus over on the side, 2x minus 10. Oops, I'm sorry. Get rid of that. I apologize. This should be just a 2. You'll see where that comes from later. So we have a 2, and then we have x squared minus 6x plus 8. All right, we do not have common denominators, so what we need to do is get them. And because we have polynomials, we need to factor. So we're going to factor the bottom first, so 2 sets of parentheses. If I'm going too quick, you can always pause the video. X and x. Factors of 20 that add up to 9 would be 4 and 5. We're adding, we need the same sign, so both minuses. Now I go over here, I'm going to factor this. 2 sets of parentheses. X and x. Factors of 8 that add up to 6 would be 4 and 2. Again, because we're adding, we need the same sign, and that means they're both minuses. Our LCD would be this over here, plus everything over here, but not repeating what we already underlined. So we have an x minus 5 and an x minus 4 and x minus 5. We already have the x minus 4, so I don't underline that. We don't have yet an x minus 2. So all 3 of these pieces are our LCD. So we're going to have an x minus 4, x minus 5, x minus 2. That's our LCD. What that means is we want to get the denominators to be that. So we are going to multiply the top and bottom of each fraction by what we're missing. So if you look at this first fraction, we have the x minus 4 and x minus 5, but we're missing the x minus 2. So on top and bottom, I'm going to multiply by x minus 2, and I'm putting it in parentheses along with the top. Now I go over to this one. Well, in my LCD, I am missing on the bottom x minus 5. So I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by x minus 5. That will now give us our LCD that we want. So now we're going to rewrite our fractions with our new denominators. So I'm going to have two fractions. Our denominators are going to be our LCD. It doesn't matter the order you write it. I like to write it in the order I put the LCD, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just bringing down the LCD. That's all I'm doing right now. If I did that, you can pause the video. Now what we need to do is we need to multiply. Well, x minus 2 times x minus 3. If I did the boxes, we would have to do the boxes for this. So x minus 2, x minus 3. I'll give you that answer to save time. That would be x squared minus 5x plus 6. If you want to work it out, go for it. Over here, we need to multiply everything by 2. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Next step, we're going to make this all one fraction with the same denominator. So I'm going to bring down the denominator, x minus 4, x minus 5, x minus 2. If I'm going too fast, pause the video. Now I'm just going to rewrite all of these. I'm not going to combine yet. So x squared minus 5x plus 6 plus 2x minus 10. Almost done. Now I'm going to combine like terms. So again, let me bring over that denominator. So x minus 4 times x minus 5 times x minus 2. We're going to combine like terms. So x squared goes in the front. Can't combine it with anything. The x's, negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. So negative 3x. And my number 6 minus 10 is negative 4. Now, this one, if you look, we have a power of 2. I'm going to try and factor this up here. So are there factors of 4 that subtract to give me 3? Yep, 1 and 4. So I actually can factor this. So look what I'm going to do. Above this, I'm going to put my 2 sets of parentheses. I'm factoring this, the top. X and x go in the front. Factors of 4 that subtract to give you 3 would be 1 and 4. We want a negative 3. So that would be 1 minus 4. So 1's positive, 4's negative. So I'm going to lightly cross off the old top. If you look, you see a pair in common. So this can be simplified finally. So I notice that I have an x minus 4 on the top and on the bottom. So I get to get rid of those. Nothing else is in common. So finally, we're ready for our answer. We still have an x plus 1 at the top. And we have our x minus 5 times x minus 2 on the bottom. You can keep it like this, or you can always do the boxes to distribute. Please make sure that you submit this into Canvas to get credit for these notes.